travelers, Chris here with another flight review, this time from Tokyo Haneda. It is quite early, but it's filling up already. I'm excited. Today I'm going to fly with Anna from Tokyo Haneda to Jakarta. This is especially interesting because I've never flown Anna business class, and also I've recently flown the JAL business class, so I can't wait to see how they actually compare, how they stack up. If you haven't seen a video, I'll try to link it somewhere. Also, side note, I will say Anna. I know it's called ANA, but it's how I usually say it, so bear with me on this one. So yeah, I can't wait. Let's check in, let's look at the lounge. I'll do, of course, a separate video on that one, and then let's see what we can experience. So let's go. Right, so while we were making our way to the check-in, let me explain a bit how I booked this flight. I actually used American Express points to switch them over to SAS, the Scandinavian Airlines. It cost 90,000 points, as well as some small taxes, around 100 euros to book this return flight in business. Not bad in terms of flight duration. We're looking at around 7.5 hours each way, so 15 hours of business class flight. For 90,000 points, sounds quite decent. I checked the general flight price, and at the time it was around $3,000, so the redemption value was quite okay. We were looking at around 3.18 US cents per point, so that's actually a really good redemption. So, since we're flying business, of course we can go to the business class. This is Haneda, so there of course is an ANA business class available. You can see it here. It's actually quite conveniently pretty much right behind the security check. One thing to note is that unfortunately there's no fast track of some sorts for Star Alliance Gold members or business or first class flights passengers at Haneda. Bit of a bummer, but to be honest, the operations usually go very well at Japanese airports, so it wasn't really a big deal. So you can see here there's two options: the ANA Suite Lounge for first class passengers or diamond status holders, and the business class lounge where I was going to. This was actually quite a maze to find, as you can see here, and I will make a separate lounge review, of course, for this lounge, but let me just say this much: the lounge experience was quite disappointing because it was just incredibly crowded. I think there's just maybe too many people who have access to this lounge, so at the time of my flight it was incredibly full and it did not give you this, relaxing atmosphere, I have to say. Nevertheless, of course, it's a benefit either way, and you get some food and coffee and drinks. I actually opted for a light breakfast as well as a tea and a sparkling water. But as you can see, at least you have views onto the runway, you can see the gates and the planes, so that at least is nice. So, time to head to the gate. Unfortunately, with this specific flight, we had to take a bus to the airplane, which always feels more like a cheapo airline, but neither way. You can see here there was this waiting time before we could check in, and then in a very organized fashion we could board in groups. However, because it was this kind of bus boarding, it meant that even if you boarded early, let's say if you have a very high status, you just had to wait on the bus for the bus to fill up. So there was not really any benefits of boarding early. So if that's the case, I always recommend you to wait a bit, because why would you want to wait in a bus? So after a surprisingly long bus ride and also some waiting time right in front of the plane until it was ready for boarding, we could finally leave. This one is a 787-9 Boeing Dreamliner. It's not the newest in the fleet, but nevertheless I was quite excited to see what I could expect. And here we are. This is seat 2K that I booked. There's a total row of, I believe, 11 or 13 rows of business class, and you can see here that it's in this kind of staggered 1-to-1 order. So what do you get if you fly ANA business class? First up, just a few words to the color scheme. I personally am not the biggest fan of it. To me, it doesn't look very classy or elegant, but nevertheless, you have these blue tones, you have these beige, like light wooden tones on the table here, for example. It's fine, but I think other airlines are doing a better job of conveying a more luxurious feeling, I guess. Nevertheless, you get, of course, some slippers, you get a pair of headphones that I will look into later, the usual stuff. The seat itself is actually quite comfortable. There's plenty of space. You can see it here. I'm around 1.90 meters and I had plenty of space. You also have 2 to 3 windows depending on your seat, so plenty of daylight and good view. So quite a plus here. And of course, as you can see it here, the big table. Something that I really missed on my Japan Airlines flight is good storage space. So yeah, you can see it's quite private, especially if you take the A or K seats, which means that you sit right next to the window and the table gives a bit of buffer to the aisle. On top of that, you can also store the blanket and the mattress topper here to the right side. I'm not sure if it's meant to be used like that, but at least I did, because there's a bit of a gap here. So this is out of the way, definitely a lot better. If you can see here also under the footrest, there's a bit of space for a backpack, but as you can see also it's not very deep, so that's a bit irritating. Unlike the footrest, which really extends very long and gives you a lot of foot space, which is of course the more important one. Upon starting, we got offered a orange juice or champagne, and I could get a bit more familiar with the seat options. You can see it here, it's not very detailed, and also if you recognize these kind of remotes, it's a bit old school, but it works. More importantly, you have a USB plug, you have an international kind of power outlet, really good. These controllers I don't really care for, because fortunately the screen was a touch screen and not too far away, so I actually never picked it up. So you can just reach forward. It's a bit uncomfortable because there's still a bit of space between you and the screen, but you know, at least it works, and it's actually quite reactive, so you don't have to worry that you have to, you know, press multiple times to make it work. Again, something that I noticed on my Japan Airlines flight with at least the controller that had a touchscreen. So here, no complaints for that. Since this is a Dreamliner, you of course have the electric window blinds. I really like those. I don't know, there's just something about it that's really fun to use. They're not as effective, I feel like, as proper blinds, but it's just a fun little gadget. Besides that, you can see here, even with my legs being fairly long, I have plenty of space, and it feels fairly private also. Not as much as, again, the Japan Airlines flight, but overall it feels quite comfy. If we have a look at the headphones, those are Panasonic on-ear headphones with cables. And I have to say, this seems quite common with a lot of airlines nowadays, that they use fairly low quality headphones. Those were quite plasticky, and to be honest, even the leather felt quite flimsy and not very comfortable. So I actually gave them a try. It definitely works, even though the noise cancellation is fairly weak, even compared to the AirPods Pro 2nd generation. There is just no comparison, and actually already after a minute or two it felt quite comfortable, so I cannot recommend those. It's fine that they have them, but I cannot imagine wearing them for an entire 2-hour film or even a 7-hour flight. One thing to note is that they included this kind of hanger to stow away the headphones, which is quite convenient, so you know, at least they have this, but to be honest, still this is quite a bit disappointing piece of hardware. Instead, I opted for my AirPods Pro 2nd generation, and also the use of the 12 South AirFly Pro Bluetooth transmitter, which basically, as you can see here, plugs into the audio input of the Inflight Entertainment system, and then you can connect it to your AirPods or other wireless headphones. Overall, the screen size is okay. The Inflight Entertainment a bit limited. We're looking at around 150 movies. It's a bit limited more on the Western side. You have a lot of Japanese, Korean, Chinese movies as well. But it's good enough for such a short flight. You might run out of things to watch if it's a more 15-hour flight. Now to the thing that actually was most disappointing to me was that there was no amenity kit. You can see here the basket that they offer to individually pick some items, but what the hell guys, what the hell ANA? This is not okay. Just for comparison, this is what we got on the Japan Airlines flight, a beautiful amenity kit branded by Maison Kitsune, and there was absolutely nothing on this ANA flight. Now I know that they give out amenity kits on other routes, but this was still quite a disappointment to me, because I think I'm not the only one who likes to collect these amenity kits, and I actually use the Japan Airlines one in my daily life and for travels. Anyway, with that in mind, we were slowly taxiing towards takeoff. After enjoying the stunning views of Mount Fuji from the takeoff, I was able to get a bit more familiar with the seat, and I want to highlight first one item that I found that was quite curious, which was that the seat always had quite a lot of play, in that if you pushed against it a bit, it wiggled around. Not sure if it's supposed to be like that, but it was a bit odd. Other than that, I really appreciated this fairly big and sturdy table that you get at this seat. It comes out from the side. It's a lot thicker than other airplane tables, and it felt really good, I have to say. It's perfect to do some work if you want to. There's plenty of space. Even with a tray of food on there, you still have some space. So that one is a really good feature. Around 45 minutes in, we were given the menu and could actually order some food. It took still a bit more time to actually bring the first round of drinks, and you can see it here. There's champagne on board, as well as different wine options. I actually opted to try the champagne as well as a non-alcoholic ANA signature drink. Both were quite nice, no complaints on there. In terms of food, it took around 2.5 hours after takeoff for the food to arrive. This time I opted for the international cuisine. It sounded nicer, so you can see here that there's a little appetizer. Afterwards you get a starter. And for this I really can recommend or comment the presentation of the food. It was really nice. You can see here the main dish with a steak, medium rare I asked for, and you can see that it's fairly decent in terms of cooking. The food overall was okay, although compared to the Japanese airline business class experience, it was a bit weaker, especially when it came to the dessert, which was just a bowl of fruits. After this, it was time to try out the lie-flat sleeping function of the seat. You get this mattress topper that you have to store somewhere, so this is why I stored this to the right side next to the window, because it's fairly big, but it's also fairly comfortable. It's not quite on par with the Airweave technology toppers by Japan Airlines, but it's fairly good. Same for the blanket. It feels nice, it feels cozy, and I also like the color scheme, to be honest. Also, the pillow was fluffy enough for a good night's sleep, even though on a 7.5-hour flight, of course, there's not that much of sleep. So I had to unpack, of course, all the items we've been given. To be honest, personally, I'm not quite sure which one I prefer, to do it myself or to have airlines where you have the bed made by the cabin crew. Either way, on this flight, on ANA, we had to do it ourselves, which is also fine. After much wiggling around, finally, I got the bed made. And to be honest, it's fine. I have to say it's a bit narrow, especially where the leg space is. And also you can see it on my shoulders. I'm pretty much shoulder to shoulder with the armrest and the center console. So it's good enough to sleep, but it could be a bit more comfy. In terms of privacy though, you can see here my point of view from lying down. It's quite good. So even when people walk by, you feel like you have plenty of privacy. Unfortunately, you can see my backpack here. It actually did not allow me to have it under the footrest when completely flat. And you can also see that there is not that much space. On the one side, on the left side, it's a bit better. On the right side, you can see that the armrest is still here and it actually takes up quite a lot of space. So it's not as comfy as it could be. For completeness sake, these are the restrooms in on the flight. One thing I found quite curious and cool is that it actually comes with the bidet function. That's very common in Japan, but I don't think I've ever seen that on an airplane, so big props. Unlike the sink, which was kind of discolored, not sure what or why that was. But anyway, overall I did not opt to sleep much. It's a short flight anyway, and you can see it's quite comfy to sit. Overall also, I really appreciated that big table because it allowed me to store things. For example, store away the little snack I had, and it's just storage is such an important factor and something that I wish more airlines would also take into account. Afterwards, I also tried the Ippudo ramen branded noodle soup here that ANA offers, but it was quite mushy and not very good. On my flight back, I was able to also try out the ice cream as well as a sandwich. And I have to say, for all of these, it was a bit disappointing. It did not quite feel worthy of a business class product, but again, better than nothing, but still a bit disappointing. One cool feature is that this tissue apparently is made out of recycled green tea leaves. So that's a nice little item. Anyway, we were slowly approaching Jakarta, and it was time to think about my conclusion for this flight. Overall, I have to say I got quite good value out of my miles redemption, but if I think about if I were to actually pay for this flight, I would be quite a bit disappointed. The food was not quite up to par with other business class products. The fact that there was no amenity kit was really surprising and also very disappointing to me. Of course, the crew was fantastic as always, and the in-flight entertainment system was at least decent. And also there was plenty of space and storage space. I love having that, so that one gets a thumbs up from me. So would I recommend this flight? To be honest, if you get a good redemption, it might be worth it, but if you have other options, for example Japan Airlines, who often flies the same routes as ANA, you might want to actually prefer them over ANA. Of course, keep in mind that ANA also has really good business and first class products now, very new, the Suite and the other one I can't remember quite now, but on some routes of course they are putting in very new airplanes. I think that the route of Tokyo to Jakarta is not a very prioritized one, which is fair, and in that regard you are getting a bit of an older product. In terms of soft product, really great. In terms of hard product, there are certain points that they really need to improve, and especially that freaking amenity kit. So overall, time to deplane, time to enjoy Jakarta. I hope this review helped you. If you had the same flight, if you have flown ANA before, let me know what your comments were, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.